Hey guys, how's it going? I just finished my workout and I got a quick announcement for you. Some of you have apparently already spotted this in my bio. I'm offering personalized training programs for anyone who is interested in either getting into working out or who is already training but wants to take that to the next level, really push the limits, pursue that excellence that we all want at the end of the day. If you're interested in that, go ahead and hit me up in the DMs. We can talk about the details. Generally speaking, what you can expect is for us to sit down for an hour and a half maybe, and we're going to talk about your life. We're going to talk about your work schedule. We're going to talk about your hobbies, how you like to work out, whether you have any experience. We're going to talk about sports you do, whether you have specific goals in certain athletic endeavors. And in general, of course, we're going to talk about what you want out of working out in terms of performance, in terms of aesthetics, of course, and in terms of general health. And then based on that, I'm going to tailor a program to your needs and your wants and give you an introduction into that workout program. And if you're interested in it, I can also continue to coach you on your training journey. So yeah, if that sounds good, go ahead and hit me up in the DMs. I'm looking forward to seeing some of you guys in a video call real soon. And until then, have a good one.
Back with another video from the beautiful outside. As you can perhaps tell from my voice, I am still a little bit sick. I actually was planning to make several videos over the last couple of days, but flu season kind of got in the way of that, so trying to pick up the slack now. And since I was out and about to enjoy nature, meditate a little bit, I thought, why not take this opportunity to record a video outdoors again for a change, because of course I spend a lot of time in these videos sitting around inside. Today's video is going to be a short one, haha. Today I want to talk about a topic that has been on my mind for quite some time, or I have held this opinion, I have held this belief for a fairly significant amount of time, and it is actually one of the first sort of values or expressions of my value system, of the values I subscribe to, that I picked up. This is something I thought about a lot several years ago already. And as you can tell from the title, what I want to talk about today is also closely related to the carnivore diet, which I am on. Although, to be fair, I'm technically not quite on the carnivore diet anymore. I'm following more of a pastoralist diet. I do eat eggs and cheese and have a little bit of milk here and there. But of course, I eat a lot of meat. And I am very firmly of the opinion that only people who would be willing to kill for the meat they eat should actually eat meat. That sounds like an almost poetic sentence, seeing as how the words rhyme and such. Now, why do I say that? I think eating should inherently also be connected to a sort of respect or understanding when it comes to what you're eating. One of the first videos I made when I started making this type of content was a video on the topic of food. And I talked about how modern day people are wrong about food, in the sense that people will say they love food, or they love food too much, that's why they can't get on a certain type of diet, or they have a hard time cutting certain types of foods out of their diet. And I explained how that is somewhat of a silly proposition, because if you actually love food, then you would be able to appreciate even the simplest of foods for the positive aspects they have to them. And I think fundamentally people have kind of disconnected from what food is and what it means to eat to a very significant degree. One of the aspects of this is eating meat, and the fact that a lot of people who eat meat are actually quite uncomfortable with animals suffering or animals being killed. I think there is something very twisted about this. Now, a lot of people instinctively, intuitively would think, isn't it a good thing to feel sorry for an animal that is in pain or that is being killed for the purposes of, being eaten, becoming a steak or a burger? Isn't it a good thing to be empathetic towards not just humans, but other types of beings as well, to feel that compassion? Here's the thing. If you feel bad about animals dying and you feel uncomfortable about it, uncomfortable when being confronted with this reality, maybe seeing a picture or a video of something like this, but then you're still eating meat, how is there any kind of congruency? How is there any sort of integrity here? I respect people who say, I don't want animals to suffer. I wouldn't kill an animal to eat. That's not something I want to do. That's not something I would do. I'm going to be a vegetarian. Now, I would never be a vegetarian, but I have a lot of respect for people who reason themselves into being a vegetarian in this way. I think that they very well could be confronted with a situation in which they would choose to kill an animal and let that be as it is. But I think in the situation where they don't have to kill any animals to survive, to eat, and they don't want animals to be killed and they wouldn't do it themselves, the respectable thing to do, in my opinion, is to not eat meat. They are respecting the animal's life, right? I don't want you to die, and so I will not eat your meat, even if I wasn't confronted with this firsthand, right? Then you have people like me. I consider killing, and especially killing for the purposes of eating what you have killed, a very natural thing, just an ordinary part of nature. All things strive to compete for resources, acquire the greatest amount of resources they can have. They strive to grow. They strive to overpower other forms of life that compete with them. If I'm not eating animals, perhaps I'm killing plants to eat them. And other animals are killing each other to eat each other. Other animals are killing plants to eat them, etc. Looks like it's actually starting to rain, but for the moment, I'll continue recording and see how things go. So personally, I have no qualms with killing, and I have no qualms with killing animals to eat them, as well as other people killing animals that I then eat. But the reason I am okay with eating meat is because I am confident in the fact that I would be willing to kill to eat meat. Now, to be clear, Damn, that was cool. I just watched a fox go for a bird, but he missed it by a hair. Missed another one. Where was I? To be clear, this to me is not a conversation about the convenience of killing everything you eat yourself. I think it is perfectly fine to have someone like a butcher, right, a specialist who takes care of this type of thing when it comes to the sort of regular basis on which meat is eaten. Although, I will say that the ritual practices that many cultures had before Christianity became established in Europe, if you're interested in Christianity and secularization, which in my opinion kind of resulted from that, you can go check out my recent video on, amongst other things, this topic. I'll be linking it up here somewhere. But many cultures before Christianity, again, became established in Europe had animal sacrifices, which were partaken in, which were witnessed, which were done, undertaken by the community. So if you have a village or a small town, a district maybe of city-state or whatever, this would be a sort of public slaughtering of an animal. And I do think there is value to this type of practice that has been lost because while it is perhaps not feasible, depending on the society we're talking about, to always slaughter every single piece of meat that will end up on your plate, to always slaughter the animals that are then cut apart and made into these pieces of meat, if you will. Having these ritual practices on a regular basis, where everyone is confronted with the reality of taking this life, of slaughtering an animal, of, this transition from a living thing to that which we eat, our food. It keeps people much more connected to what they are eating, what meat actually is, what their food is. And I think that's a very, very valuable part of pagan, for lack of a better term, religions that has kind of gone missing in our society. That being said, in terms of actual convenience, again, I think there's nothing wrong with having someone like a butcher who takes care of most of Man, there's a proper animal party going on around here right now. Got a big ass raven over there. Votan watching over me record this video. We're losing light. I'm going to try stick to the topic at hand, not let myself get distracted by the cool ass animals around here. Okay. In terms of convenience, I don't think there's anything wrong, again, with having a butcher who takes care of this type of thing and you go to the butcher and you get your cuts of meat. Just like I don't think there's anything wrong with going someplace where the food is already cooked every now and then. You know, something like a restaurant, or if we're thinking in more old-timey terms, a tavern, something of that sort. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But the sort of conditional for this is that if you were forced to take care of this, if you had to do this, you would be fine with killing the animals. You would be fine with taking them apart, etc. You would be fine with doing what the butcher does or what the hunter does, And it's just a matter of convenience, again, that you are not taking care of it. It's not a question of disgust, discomfort, being scared, being appalled by this type of thing. And that is really the third type of people, because I've mentioned, again, people who have a problem with killing animals and choose not to consume their flesh. I've mentioned people who are completely fine with killing animals and consuming their flesh. This is where we get to the third type of people. And this is really the type of people that this video is perhaps kind of addressed to. Perhaps it is addressed to those types of people who engage in this behavior, but will perhaps recognize, as I'm talking about this topic, that it is a very disrespectful way of engaging with nature, engaging with life. And that is the type of people who are kind of grossed out by the reality of what meat actually is, which is parts of a living being that has been killed and taken apart so that you can eat it. And these are the types of people who will order chicken nuggets at a fast food place, and if they bite into the nugget and the inside has like a little bit too much texture, they're kind of grossed out. If they eat some chicken breast and there happens to be like a vein in the chicken breast or something, they think that's gross. They think that's disgusting. That type of thing. You know, the types of people who eat meat, eat, salami. They put salami on a sandwich, that type of thing. But confronted with the fact that an animal is being killed, they would get really sad or really, frightened or, again, grossed out. They feel kind of unwell when being confronted with this fact. And to me, there is something deeply disgusting about this type of behavior and this type of relationship to meat and to the animals being killed so that you may eat meat. There's something just deeply wrong about it to me. I think ultimately, anyone who... Oh wait, this is cool. It's like a tiny bee. Holy crap. The hell is that? Okay, I'm getting distracted again. I'm gonna go ahead and blame that on my sickness. But I'm actually really enjoying myself here. Out in nature. I'm surprised how many animals are out and about. I'm actually not that far out. I'm on a very, very big graveyard, so I'm not quite in the woods, but there's some action going on here. Okay. I lost my train of thought again. God damn it. Let me regain it real quick. Right. Respecting life. I have a deep reverence for life. I have a deep respect for life. I cherish life. I appreciate life. I love life. I say yes to life. Obviously, I've made a video about the reason why I think life is so awesome in the past. I love the challenges, the hardships of life. I love everything about it. And of course, with this love for life comes a love for other life forms, a sort of appreciation of the beauty of life and nature. I have a deep appreciation for, as I've sort of touched on in the past, cats, for instance, as one of nature's most beautiful, in many ways most pristine creations. And this goes for many other animal species as well. In fact, while I might, get pissed off at something like a mosquito or a tick, generally speaking, I can find some sort of fascination with almost every living being out there. Although I will say I'm a lot more interested in animals than I am in plants because they just got a lot more action going on, right? And amongst animals, I am personally most interested in the greatest individuals within the animal kingdom. So, ants are a very successful species in the sense that, they procreate, they spread all around the world. They are very successful from a sort of biological standpoint, but an individual ant is not a very impressive animal and doesn't really have a lot of value to an ant colony. Like an individual ant, one single ant, is more or less irrelevant. And I am much more fascinated, impressed, stunned, sort of enchanted by something like a lion, an elephant, maybe a bear. Those creatures, just as an individual living being, are so much more fascinating to me. But overall, again, I have a general baseline appreciation for life in its many shapes and forms that it comes in. And as someone who appreciates life, I also think it is a question of respect to be willing to engage with the taking of a life. I think I am well within my rights to kill something in order to enact my will upon the world, right? I wish to grow strong. I wish to grow powerful. And for this purpose, I would kill an animal and consume its flesh, just as a lion would, or a bear would, again, a wolf, what have you. But competing with that life, engaging with the taking of that life, being the one to kill it, or at the very least, again, being willing to kill it, being completely fine with this aspect of nature, with the killing, with the taking of a life for the purpose of enhancing myself, of absorbing its power to an extent. That is part of this respect for life. To look that creature in the eye as it dies and essentially say, you don't have to say it, obviously, with words, but to basically communicate, I have defeated you, and I will now take your power for my own. That, to me, is just a deep sign of respect that any life I take to enhance myself deserves, in my opinion. When I thought about making this video, talking about this topic, there was an analogy that immediately, or almost immediately, came to mind for me. I thought of a movie or TV show, a book, some type of story where you have a protagonist, a sort of hero, and you have an antagonist. And of course, there are different types of villains, right? You have the villain who, in many ways, perhaps mirrors the hero. Let's say the hero is a warrior, right? He's a fighter, a swordsman, perhaps. And you have this villain who, in some way, shape, or form, is like an evil version of our hero. So perhaps he has different ideals, he has different goals, he wants to become the best swordsman as well, which our hero wants to. Whatever it may be, they lock horns, right? They clash, but the villain is not fundamentally different from the hero. He is also, let's say, a swordsman. He is a warrior as well. But then you also have other types of stories where the villain is more of a mastermind, right? He controls other people. He sends people out to kill the hero or to set a trap for him. He has these henchmen, right? These goons that he sends out. And maybe he has like his top henchman, his right-hand man or whatever. But generally speaking, these goons, they are kind of like pawns to him, right? They are like tools, essentially, that he is using to fight the hero. He doesn't really take them too seriously. He doesn't respect them, really. And so the hero is not fighting the villain directly. He is fighting just these extensions of the villain. But the villain himself is perhaps not a fighter. And not just not a fighter, perhaps he's quite the coward, quite the weakling. And the hero has finally fought his way through all of those henchmen and he gets to confront the villain. Maybe the villain acts all scared, he begs for his life, even though he sent out countless people to kill the hero before, that type of thing. And the sort of culmination of this type of character, of this type of antagonist, would be a guy who is not only kind of a coward and, tries to scramble away or begs for his life when he encounters the hero, but a guy who's actually kind of uncomfortable or disgusted or scared of the killing part of his whole villain business. So he sends out people to do his dirty work, and he is actually uncomfortable with being confronted with the reality of his dirty work. I think the first Kingsman movie had a villain like this, who was grossed out by the sight of blood. And to me, while this can make for a great character in a story, I think in terms of personal respect, most people would intuitively agree that the first type of antagonist, a villain, I described, the guy who is more of a competitor to the hero, is the type of villain we respect a lot more. The do-it-yourself kind of villain, right? He puts in the work. He gets his hands dirty, right? He's the one killing the people. He is maybe actually good at fighting or assassinating or whatever it is he does. He might be the bad guy of the story. He might be the guy opposing our protagonist. But he has a strength to him. He has these abilities. He's willing to do what needs to be done to get where he wants to get. And there is something admirable about that, even if we are rooting for our hero. I think most people would intuitively agree that this type of bad guy is a lot more respectable on a personal level than the sort of evil mastermind guy who sends out his goons, who sends out his henchmen, and he's trying to take the hero out, but not only would he not be capable of doing so himself, but when confronted personally with the hero, he's actually kind of scared of the whole situation, of the whole deal. And again, maybe he's even disgusted by violence or uncomfortable with it, depending on how far you want to take this. There's just something weaselly, something pathetic, something gross about this type of bad guy, which in some cases can make for a great antagonist, again. But if we translate this to what I was talking about before, to meat, to food, to the question of, are you willing to engage with what you're eating? And if we think about people who think the sight of raw meat is gross, who think the smell of raw meat is gross, who again get grossed out when there's like a vein in the meat they are eating, in the perfectly evenly cooked and bland-looking piece of chicken that has been prepared beyond the point of ever being recognizable as a piece of flesh that was cut from a living being. If we think of these people, Are they not the second example? Are they not the mastermind villain, quote unquote, who, when confronted with the reality of what he has ordered others to do for his own benefit, gets scared, gets disgusted, panics? There is something deeply pathetic about this, again, to me, and I have very little respect for people who eat meat but would not be willing to kill for it. So if that's you, maybe take a step back, maybe meditate on this a little bit, maybe think about what I've said in this video, and think about whether or not you are providing the lives being taken so that you may consume flesh and grow strong through this consumption, become a greater man because of it, whether you are offering up the respect these lives deserve. I'll leave it at that because my foot is falling asleep and my voice is starting to give out. It's also getting kind of late. I'm losing light, and I'm looking forward to a juicy, meat-filled dinner, which, yes, I would be very willing to kill for. I think I might talk about rituals a little bit more in the future. I kind of touched on why I think animal sacrifices were in some ways a very good thing culturally, for the community, for the relationship to nature and the living and your food. I touched on that a little bit in this video. I might talk about that a little bit more in the future. For now, if you enjoyed yourself, if you found this interesting, inspiring, if you learned something, go ahead and leave a like. Also, feel free to share these videos with your friends, family, whoever, if you think they could benefit from them. If you have any questions, if there's something you want to discuss, as always, go ahead and leave a comment down below, or you can also hit me up on Instagram if you want to discuss something more in-depth and privately with me. If you're interested in a personalized workout program, as I mentioned at the beginning of the video, you can go ahead and hit me up on Instagram. And yeah, we can talk about the details, see what I can do. If you want to see more videos like these in the future, talks about training, general health, philosophy, also some more edited videos like the one I recently did on the rise of psychology, go ahead and subscribe and activate the notification bell, of course, if you want notifications. All that being said, I'm going to go ahead and head home and try to revive my foot here. I'll see you guys in the next one, and until then, have a good one.